One of the bigger debates among carnivores online is whether you should eat grass-fed beef. Most of the big influencers will tell you correctly that there really isn't that big of a difference and that you don't really need to be paying $20 a pound for grass-fed ground beef. If you don't think that's what that stuff costs, go to Whole Foods sometime, check out the grass-fed, grass-finished beef. So I want to talk to you today about the differences between grass-fed beef and conventional beef and what they really are. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to spend a mountain of money to eat on the carnivore diet. You just don't need to do that. In fact, that's kind of my thing on this channel, is to tell you that you can do carnivore for fairly cheap. And no, the carnivore diet's not a religion either. There are people who, for whatever reason, watch carnivore videos and waste their time making fun of people who do this diet, probably because they're quietly jealous of the results everyone here who's doing this are getting. That's my suspicion. They just don't have the discipline to do anything even remotely close to relaxed carnivore. Probably talk about that in another video, though. So let's talk today about what is grass-fed beef and what it's not. There's a myth surrounding this. The first myth is that all beef is grass-fed. Yeah, that's true, but that's not what a grass-fed cow means. Grass-fed means, at the minimum, according to the USDA, that a cow is fed grass for 50% of its life or more. And that's what all it takes to get a label from the USDA that it's grass-fed. That should also be concerning because cows are often slaughtered anywhere between 24 to 28 months of age. So we're talking 12 to 14 months of grass before being fed who knows what else, often soy and corn and the rest. Those would be considered probably grain-finished, grass-fed, grain-finished cows. Most of the time, if you're getting grain-finished, it's actually going to be better quality than that, because while the U.S. government, through the USDA, doesn't have robust standards for this kind of thing, the cattle industry informally tends to. I say informally, it does help to know where you get your beef from. So this is why I am one of those people who suggest that you buy at least some of your beef from ranchers directly. And you can find advertisements actually all over rural America for that. There are, in the town I live in, several cattlemen who will sell you beef directly. But really, there are several designations for this. You can find different kinds of grass-fed beef. The first you're going to find is, well, different kinds of beef in general. The first you'll find is conventional. These are confined animals that are finished on grain. These are cows that don't spend a lot of time in pasture throughout most of their life in general, and they're finished on what passes for grain. And I don't know why this is, but soybeans count as grain for this. Most soybeans in the United States, most corn, go to cows. Think about that for a moment. I remember Dr. Shawn Baker talking about a study, and I wish I could find this. I really wish I could find this. Either the video he did, which wasn't even that long ago, he just does like 5 of them a day, or the study he talked about, but I distinctly remember him talking about some scientists looked at cattle and actually like the meat that you can buy that is finished conventionally. This is how we're talking about here in this first category, and how a lot of the flesh bore signs of being sort of metabolically damaged. And so for conventional beef, and while it's accepted that eating the regular beef is fine for people, if you could afford to get better, you probably should, simply because, logically speaking, it may not be the best bet to eat the metabolically damaged stuff, in theory anyway. Again, very little testing has ever been done on this. First category is, again, conventional, confined animals finished on grain. And I'm getting this from a website for a university that does a lot of agricultural work. Anyway, the second category are pasture raised. These are pasture animals finished on grain. These are cows that actually manage to move around a lot, tend to be healthier, still finished on grain. The third are grass feedlot. These are, again, confined animals, but they're finished on grass. You're seeing any of the really large grass finishing operations are probably doing this, because again, all they're advertising their cattle as is grass-fed, grass-finished. They're not actually telling you how it's finished. Never on the package, probably never on their website, unless you can get pictures of the cattle on their website and their conditions. And they're probably not going to show you these kind of pictures because it looks like a conventional cattle practice until you look to see what they're being fed in their confined feedlots. And the fourth are, of course, pure grass-fed. These are pastured animals finished on grass. Even when these categories, of course, are several criteria where an individual beef operation may not exactly fit these things, because again, this is not highly regulated. And that's one of kind of the problems here. People want this higher quality beef, but you don't have a way of finding out if it's higher quality short of going to the farm yourself and taking a look at what the operation is. The whole grass-fed industry actually sort of builds itself on the premise of meeting market demand by offering the customer what's essentially an alternative beef product that is raised and processed under certain what we would call expected criteria. We expect grass-finished beef to be pasture-raised. That's what we expect. Consumers of this product are also concerned with other issues, the animal's health, how it was treated, basic thing, because there's an underlying belief in the regenerative agriculture movement in the carnivore world. But really, there are, again, no regulations for this. So what that brings us to is a lot of trust. Now, this is, again, why it is, I think, more advisable if you're going to go grass-fed to probably avoid a lot of the stuff you see in the grocery store when you see the grass-fed stuff. And I tell you this because I've had conversations with ranchers who will tell you that oftentimes that grass-fed stuff in the grocery store is only technically grass-fed. And it's, some of these lower, like the grass feedlot stuff that is indistinguishable in every way from the other meat in the store and is in every way processed by the same organizations, the same USDA operations that, give us all the PETA videos, basically, all the videos online of animals being mistreated and things, even though most of those things are pretty old. These are essentially treated in every way from start to finish like a regular cow. It's just given it's just given grass mostly. The other consideration for this is that there is functionally very little difference between grass-fed and grass-finished beef and non-grass finished when it comes to the fatty acid profile. The difference is about a 5% difference between the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio that you find in the grass-finished beef versus anything else, any other cattle. Why is that? It's a mystery, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the flavor is what is most different. The fat content is what is most different, not the makeup of that fat content. So you don't get that big of a bang for your buck going with the grass-fed, grass-finished. There might be other reasons to want the grass-finished. There are carnivores that I see who say that if they're eating conventionally raised cattle, they run into a problem. They get a histamine response, or just the mere presence of those trace amounts of the soy and corn in their fatty acids causes them problems. These are people with very serious metabolic issues, which is, again, why I mentioned at the beginning my favorite critique I see from people who don't know what it is we're doing, that they call this a religion. It's not. People have real issues, and they've become quite desperate to deal with them, hence why they're going carnivore. So my advice for you is price per pound. Is grass-fed beef worth it? Most of the time, no, unless you're buying it from the rancher directly, because then you'll get a better deal anyway, especially when you're getting into the bulk purchasing. When you're paying $4.50, $5 a pound, $5.50 a pound for half a cow or a full cow, that blows away the grocery store prices for conventionally raised beef by a country mile. It's not even close. Yeah, those prices for ground beef may not sound that great most of the time. When you're talking about ribeyes, when you're talking about steaks, when you're talking about the roasts, that's where you start to get things more comparably priced, or even better priced in your favor. And you can often get that for the grass-finished beef if you know where to look. Just the one final thing I would give you about this is that a lot of the grass-fed, grass-finished beef in the United States for sale is frozen and imported from New Zealand or Australia or a few other places that are warm all year round. And that is because, for whatever reason, grass finishing in a pasture is more difficult in the United States just because we're not as hot of a climate as those places. Again, that's information I got directly from a rancher that I pick, whose brain I pick on this stuff periodically. So beef I buy that I've shown in my about a half cow video, and I'm just informed the rancher I buy from that in the fall I'll probably be buying a full cow. The beef that I buy from him is grain finished. He also tells me that the grain that he finishes with are oats and barley, that they are not corn. He does not use soy. He doesn't use any of that stuff. So it's better grains anyway. And they get this grain for the last 3 months of their life. So remember what I said at the beginning. USDA requires to be the last half of the cow's life, we're talking a 24 to 28 month life cycle here, be finished with grass. If it's pure grass fed, if it's grain finished, it's at least first half of its life is all grass, and the second half can be whatever grains are going to feed the cow. And again, that can include corn and soy. But a lot of ranchers who are selling this better beef are doing it with not corn and not soy. And that can be for any number of reasons, including the fact that fuel prices are so expensive, causing the cost of corn to go through the roof. And soybeans are, just like any other crop right now, kind of strapped. There's more of a market demand than there is supply because of various external factors. Anyway, let me know what you thought of this in the comments. I hope you found this helpful. At the end of the day, the 5% difference between the fat content of grass-fed beef and non-grass-fed beef is probably not, to me, worth it unless you've got another reason you need it, or if you're buying it for ethical reasons. If you're doing that for ethical reasons, more power to you. But you don't need to worry about that for the typical consumer of this product. Your conventional grocery store beef will probably be fine. Ethics issues aside, for about all the arguments about confining animals and the rest of it. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you thought about this. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help these new channels grow. And thanks for watching today.